Good afternoon. Welcome to this session. My name is Kaori Iida. I'm the senior editor of the Economics News Division at NHK Public Television here in Tokyo. I can't tell you how thrilled I am moderating this session. We are celebrating the 52nd anniversary from the first Tokyo Olympics, and viewing sports have dramatically changed during the past 5 decades. The topic of this session is the future of sport entertainment, and we will be discussing how emerging trends and technologies will change the way we experience sport entertainment. And we have a perfect panel to discuss this fascinating topic. To my left is Ambassador Andrijana Cvetkovic of the Republic of Macedonia. And we have Professor Masa Inakage of the Graduate School of Keio, Media Design at Keio University. We also have Hideyuki Andy Hata, who is the president of Nielsen Sports Japan. And last but not least, we have Mr. Yobie Benjamin, who is co-founder of Avegant Corporation. I'd like to remind the audience that we will be taking questions from the floor. And we have a lot of ground to cover, so I'm going to start with Yobie. Yobie, set the stage for us. You consult sports companies. Tell us what the new trend is and how you see sports viewing evolving.
Sports is growing at an amazing pace, but not in the way everybody probably in this room thinks. There's a phenomenon right now in sports called alt sports, or alternative sports, that are growing at a very rapid clip and has extremely large audiences, but you've never heard of, because it's your kids who know them. I'm going to try this little example.
Tell us a little bit about alt athletes for those of us who are not familiar.
So alt athletes have the same athletic ability, the same discipline as regular athletes, but they do sports that are totally different and new. A good example that probably will resonate to some people is Frisbee. The old Frisbee is not just Frisbee. There's Frisbee golf right now. You follow the same rules as golf, and there's Ultimate Frisbee, which follows the rules of soccer. Surfing, for example, I'll give another quick example, has evolved from surfing to windsurfing, to kite surfing, to foil surfing. And foil surfing basically uses foils that are used by boats that compete in the America's Cup. And you see these sports are generating million views on non-traditional media.
So how will viewing sports evolve?
That's very interesting, because of the Olympics coming up over here in 2020. Everything that we know about viewing sports today, as in watching television, reading the newspaper, listening to the radio, that will all evolve out. In the United States, in the last 2 weeks, there was a big press release about the NFL losing viewership, football viewership, I think at over 10%, which is a huge number. Nobody knows where the audience went. But the truth of the matter is, the kids know. They're in YouTube, they're in Twitter, they're in streaming media. And by 2020, we're not going to be watching sports on TV, probably. We'll be doing it in augmented reality glasses. And I guarantee you in this one conversation that augmented reality will be cheap enough that everybody will have it, much like they would have a mobile phone.
By 2020?
Definitely, 100%.
Okay. Andy, sticking to viewing experience, how do you see the situation evolving?
Well, as Benjamin mentioned, there's a lot of technologies out there that's under development. In sports, I think there's 3 key aspects. There's the participation, then the competition, then the entertainment side. And what these new technologies will bring is it will create a good, touching point for each one, where in the past it might have been individual aspects. Now technology is advancing so that the participation, competition, entertainment, all can be mixed in different angles. Thus, you see a lot of new sports, new experiences that's really evolving. So I think you can't just isolate the viewership as it is. It's so balancing so many, how do you say, it's mixing in many ways. So I think there's a lot of opportunities out there in the future that's going to really change.
Just to follow up, you come from the industry. I think many of us would agree that sports have become much more commercialized during the past 50 years. How would you react to that? And do you think commercialism will be more expanded in the future with new technology?
Definitely, yes. I think the angle is really changing, where once you turn a TV on in the past, it's all about the viewership and how many people watch TV. Now, again, you have so many alternatives. Although you might have a TV on, you also have a pad. So how do you measure that? Again, what Benjamin also said as well is it's not, people won't watch it on TV anymore. There's different alternatives. So from a commercialization point of view, obviously you need to have new measurement to capture that. So it's driving the consumer behavior, is driving innovation into new ways of measurement, which I think the NFL, is also facing, is that the traditional approach is shifting so fast that you really have to be, prepared for these changes. And the cycle is moving so fast that you do have to have a base, but also a future model that you have to continue to catch up or even proceed.
So what is this new measurement?
Well, there's new measurements in the traditional, let's say, TV field. Then there's a digital side, where digital, as maybe a lot of people might use today, is not just about viewership, it's also about sharing, and even putting likes or comments. So you have to look at it different angles of how you want to measure. So adapting to that digital field is starting to happen in the Western world. It's gradually growing, how you measure content and also advertising, where it's hard to now define what is the content and what is the commercial. So adapting to that there's new ways of measurement that is starting to be introduced in key countries now, which will spread, I think, more quickly than ever because of the demand.
Okay. Masa, let me turn to you. How do you think the stadium experience will change in the future with new technology?
Right. So as already mentioned, that augmented reality is becoming a central piece of experience. However, I think we need to look at a broader picture of technology that we can create a deeper, engaging experience in stadium, but also out of stadium experiences by spectators or fans or community at large. I would predict that we are moving towards a five-sense experience, immersive experience, not only just visual and audio experience, but even tactile sensations, maybe some smell, we can feel the heat. All these things that you feel when you're in the stadium or in rock concert as an audience, you actually feel with your body. How can we recreate this kind of experience with technologies available or new technologies that's coming up that allows people to experience beyond audio and visual experience?
You talked about smell and feeling the heat. So how will these new technologies transform the fan experience?
So that the more we tap onto our five senses, the engagement level gets deeper and stronger. And therefore, if we can create an entertainment experience by designing carefully how this kind of five-sense experience can translate into a fan experience.
Madam Ambassador, how do you see the viewing experience transforming from your point of view?
It's interesting. I'm ambassador of the Republic of Macedonia. However, before becoming ambassador, before maybe 11 years ago, I came to Japan to do a research on digital cinema. And from 2003 to 2005, I did a master's degree in digital cinema in Bulgaria about how the technology will evolve. And in 2003, no one believed that digital technology will become the standard in cinema, which is now becoming evident. However, from my own experience, I can tell you that this change or implementation of digital technology into real market is very slow. So in 2003, I was already talking about what we are now talking that it's going to happen. However, the market dictates what's going to become the next trend. In the past, traditionally the sport was viewed in the aristocratic area, and it was a matter of life and death. You all remember the guy Julius Caesar and the two people fighting, and whoever survives gets to live. So now the award is turned into profit. So this profit will actually dictate how the new technologies will relate to the audience. And what I think, in the sense of viewership, how it will change, I think it will go in several directions. One direction is, of course, sports has always been a social event in which we have the participants and we have the audience. And I don't think that that will change, because by definition, the sport includes the viewers as part of the game or the match. Individually, as we know, many people cannot travel to the exact spot where the match is played, and they want to view it at home. However, we want to have experience as if we are there, because the technology is already allowing us to have many of these virtual reality, augmented reality experiences, so why not having it sports? So in 2003, I actually wrote in my dissertation that cinema theaters will no longer be used for production movies. It will be used for big sporting events. It's still possible. It's possible today, but it's not in that massive scale that I expected. Having the 4K and 8K technology, in which it gives you the full resolution of the screen and such a clarity, and now having the 360 view, volumeric, spheric cameras, and 3D coming back in cinema as well as in sports. I think for the future, my maybe idea how that will develop is merging all these technologies together, including holographic imaging, 7D holographic imaging, that will allow, maybe the cinema theaters will be designed as a stadium in which people will be wearing some kind of device. Again, it will be a social event. People will be cheering, be together, drinking beer or something else while they're watching the event, and have the experiences as if they're there. And maybe more, because the technology is allowing us to have more direct experience, like to zoom in, to stop, to replay something, or to even check facts about the players itself. So I'm very excited to where the sports will go, and I hope that we will move faster in that direction.
Yobie, when the ambassador mentioned the hologram, you're like, I can't agree more. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, for those of you who may have heard, there's this rapper, his name was Tupac Shakur, and there was a project that we did wherein we had Snoop Dogg, who is alive, and Tupac Shakur, who's dead, actually played in the same concert at Coachella. I can't show that in a World Economic Forum thing because it's all rap music, but I can assure you, if you Google it, you'll have fun watching it. The other thing, can I ask a question for now? How many people here know what League of Legends is? Okay, so very few. Who do you think has more viewership? A League of Legends tournament or an NFL game? League of Legends, 10 times bigger than a football game.
Tell us why.
It's because, as the ambassador said, it's very participatory, right? You're out there, you're watching the game, people playing a video game that you're watching while you're chatting with a whole bunch of other people who are watching it. They may be strangers, they may be your friends, and you're rooting for a team or teams. In Korea, you can fill a 60,000-seat stadium watching people play video games. The same, by the way, in the United States. You can fill up the Bill Graham Auditorium Center, with people watching video games. And people pay a lot of money. Professional athletes in esports, the top ones are paid way over $1 million a year. And who would have ever thought that somebody playing a video game is now going to get paid $1 million to play in front of a 60,000 person stadium?
Yobie, I think you need to remind us what esports is.
So esports is a phenomenon. It's basically online gaming, but it has all the elements of a sporting event. You have teams, you have strategy, you have concentration, you have physical stamina. People think that because you're playing a game that you don't have the physical stamina. Well, try sitting and playing a game for 8 hours and see how much stamina you have. You have to have, the physical stamina to withstand playing a game for 5 hours straight, competing with another team. So they have all the attributes of what you would say a normal athlete, but it's a different game. And they tend to be video games, and they tend to be battle-related games, but they're all team games also, which is very interesting. League of Legends is a good example.
Andy, we heard from Yobie at the outset that the NFL is losing viewership. You're originally an American football player. Tell us what you think, how legacy or traditional sports organizations can stay relevant in this circumstance.
Well, I think the important factor is the generation is shifting in many ways, and I think it's been the same in the past. I think our generation compared to our parents and before has different perspectives and different tools that they can leverage. And speaking about esports, for example, if you look about the success that's been behind it, again, going back to 3 bases, the participant area, which is very good to the youth. It's very interactive from people who watch it from an online point of view. Then the competitiveness is well structured, that there's a very strong backfield of not just the players participate, the infrastructure for these guys to participate at events is very well organized. Then the entertainment aspect of how it's broadcast, how the live entertainment is well alive, really brings this whole phenomenon together. So I think there's a hint there that it's not just the generation itself. There is a fundamental approach of how you approach it from a marketing point of view, that you can really create new models if you really dig in correctly and execute with the right people and the right partners. So commercially, I heard it's a very strong base model. Game developers, players and teams, league structures, tournaments, then the platforms and the broadcast is a huge business now. So getting back to the NFL, I think they've been working very hard to really be ahead of the game, but because now the speed and new technologies developing, I think the demand has picked up. And the other, I think, revamping that they need is that global reach. If you think about the market in the US, it's big enough to sustain itself, but with a little change in the demographic, et cetera, you're left out with the same pie that you have to go over and over. The growing sports is the ones that really break out into the field. So I think they're realizing that, going to the UK, going to China, and really going for that big base. So I think you have to do both and be balanced at the same time.
Madam Ambassador, do you think we need to redefine fandomship?
I think fandomship is being redefined as we speak, because previously, like maybe my mother and father generation, they had some favorite sportsmen. They would know their history and everything. Today it's so interactive, having all this social media with Instagram or Facebook or anything. Anyone can even create a content. Mm-hmm. So they're not only receiving the content about the favorite stars or players, they are creating the content, they're sharing the content, they're sharing the news in real time. There is one channel on, one profile on Instagram from high school students in the United States. They're in real time publishing news about sportmen and all the new deals, who will play for whom, who win what, and all with image and some short text in the image itself. So the news is becoming available for everyone in real time. And I think fans are really rooting for favorite heroes, not only in terms of participation in the game and how well they scored, they identify with the players on a much personal level. They want to know more about their personal history, what kind of music they like, what kind of, if you like, fashion accessories they have. So it's becoming all more personal, and it's becoming more important, that relationship between the fans and the audience. And I think we cannot even predict in which direction this will go, because it's the young people who are consumers of this sport, and as the panelists mentioned, the esports, this is so big, and I think it's going to become a huge thing, especially that we know from many sports that will develop in the future that we cannot even predict at this point. And with that, in that respect, also the fandomship will change.
Masa, we've been discussing how viewing might change. Can you talk a little bit about how athletes might change with new technologies?
Right, so with this emergence of esports that's still using console-based games, will first of all translate into embodied interaction, that you use your whole body as athlete to compete against each other, team-based or solo. And therefore, the skill sets of athletes are not only about training yourself physically, but also strategically, online collaboration, and so there are added layers of things that athletes need to know. On top of that, I think the esports and your user-generated content idea, at Keio, we are starting to do a new sports invention called Superhuman Sports, that we invite all the users who are athletic lovers to join forces to invent new sports that can bring in with new technologies available and compete. And maybe in the future, esports, one of the esports category could be something that uses drones or augmented reality type of application.
An interesting thing, one of the most interesting sports that you probably have heard of but don't know, Pokemon Go. Okay, there are teams being formed now doing Pokemon Go. Is it a sport? It is, because you have to go from one place to another. Pokemon Go has taken more teenagers out of the chair than any sport ever. They go, get out, then they look for the Pokemon. They're doing teams right now, and it's growing very, very, very fast. And teams are being formed, ad hoc teams, and it's going to just get bigger and bigger, because the augmented reality features of Pokemon Go are going to be adopted in other types of new and emerging esports or sport formats.
Yobie, how important is that team factor, especially for the millennials?
I think it's the team and the competition is important for millennials, but more important is participation, that you don't have to be in the team. Twitch, for example, was sold to Amazon for over $1 billion, and you say, what do? They just watch streaming videos of people playing games. But it's worth $1 billion because the people who watch that produce enough advertising revenue to justify that. And what makes it interesting is not the team aspect, but the fact that you can participate as an audience member, as the ambassador said. You know, the audience can participate, as Masa said, and Andy, you know. This participation is a big deal. You can't do that in football. You can't go and pretend you're the quarterback. But in Pokemon Go, you're on. Turn on your phone, you're on. You know.
Andy, how do you see athletes evolving with new technology?
Well, I think the good side is the future development of applications and people getting more knowledge of when in the 90s and maybe just even 20 years back, being an athlete, you were very restricted on how much information you can get accessed. And I think there's a lot of passionate athletes, and I know one in this crowd today, who's gone out, break the barrier in different worlds, was successful, And what he felt was to break it and give it back to the next generation. And for example, having a application that will give you world-class education from a coach point of view and nutrition point of view and mind point of view, I think that really gives a huge opportunity for athletes to really grow in many ways. And even if you get, I think the AI technology, for example, in the future, maybe 10 years back, you're 20 years later, you kind of know, go back and know how you developed as an athlete based on data, based on facts that could help not only yourselves, but your, let's say, your son or different people. So I think the world of technology is going to really reshape how development in many regions and levels that could really break up so many new waves that that's very important, I think, in development. So.
Andy, so do you think that we'll be using artificial intelligence in sports on a daily basis in the future?
Yeah, I definitely do, because if you think about it, I don't know how much, for example, Shigeo Nagashima, major player, compared his mind to, let's say, Sadahara O, sorry to be very local, but two star players, what are they thinking? How do they develop themselves? Compare these and, learn from it. It'd be fascinating, right? So these factual information will develop, and I think the more you can accumulate the touch points, there will be so many variants, and not just locally, but globally. It'll be an amazing era, and once that can surpass the development side, I think there will be a new audience that will be fascinated. And even the fantasy games, there might be not just a statistic data anymore. It could be like a brainwave type of angle that you might want to develop or compete in. So I think the technology is endless, so it's a huge opportunity.
Masa, did you want to add something?
Sure. I think the AI can bridge the gap between the level of skills. So you might be able to compete against a professional player and me as a novice player. And today with the match, it doesn't be satisfactory for the novice user or professionals. But with the AI technology assisting to fill the gap, then we can have one competition with different abilities and different skill sets.
I wanted to ask all of you, we're talking about holograms, we're talking about esports, fantasy sports. So how do you define a sport, or how do you define an athlete in the future? I mean, that's not your traditional way of thinking of sports or athletes. Start with Yobie.
I think we create new athletes every day, in new categories every day. Again, you wouldn't really think that a game like Pokemon Go would be athletic, but you can very easily conceptualize it turning into a team sport where you can work together in order to gather your points, go from one location to another location. And people say that's not a sport, but it is if you're walking. It is if you're running after your Pokemons. So what that athlete will be in the future is not necessarily the athlete is Ronaldo doing soccer. Mm-hmm. It could be a whole new sport, a whole new category that we haven't even conceptualized of right now.
What about you, Madam Ambassador?
That's a very good question. I think how we define what is sport and what is not sport. I think maybe it's a very basic principle, but it's important to have at least two people competing. So the element of competition and trying to see who's going to be better. But then what in the future, what if in the future we have a human competing with a robot?
Is that a sport?
Is that a sport, right? Or in augmented reality, maybe there will be a program of the, let's say, the player this and this, with this set of capabilities, and you compete with this player virtually. But is that a sport or not? So I think, however, that it's very like Pokemon Go. I think will definitely become a sport. Why? Because when Super Mario, I remember when I was a kid, Super Mario came out, and it was so simple, and it evolved into the gaming industry that we have today. So I think all of these definitions about what's going to be sport and how the sport will develop will actually come from games. Because in game, the principle is winning. So you're competing in the virtual reality. In the esports, you're competing with software, with machine, but it's not so anymore, because we have network, we have users, platforms in which people are competing. And just to touch on the previous question as well, how the athletes will change. As we can see, even in today's some of the Paralympic, Olympic, there are even players who are using devices which are skeletons, powered skeletons, that help them perform and be part of the match. And this is actually, we have to ask, is this transhumanism? Are we bridging from human to half human, half technology? And will that be also the future of sports? Because you know, with the technology developing and the speed and everything, the audience would like to watch something faster, better, more exciting. So maybe the future sports athletes, they will all have some kind of devices on them to make them faster, better, and perform in a different way. So I'm very interested to see. And it's just a few weeks ago, I went to one exhibition hall in which they were exhibiting, I won't mention the company, but they were exhibiting new technologies. And one of the technologies is a camera that can record in full darkness, like full darkness. So why not contemplate a sport that will be performed in full darkness and see how people do it? I mean, there are really so many directions in which the sport can go.
Masa, especially for myself, it's hard to imagine computer games as sports. So how would you define sports, and how would you define an athlete?
I think now that we're expanding the definition and examples already through different definitions of trial and error of inventing new sports, alt games. So to me, I think it's time to redefine what sport is if we want to define it. And to me, it is about competition, strategy, and then involves training, and then involves spectatorship. Whatever we can do that, and then the more physical that we use our body to engage in the participation and playing, I would consider it as a sport. It may not be a strict definition of what sport is today, but I think it will definitely be considered. Esports, it's not physical, active, but you still need stamina, as you mentioned.
Oh yeah, try doing it for 5 hours straight. It's pretty hard.
It's also mental.
Yeah, totally mental.
In fact, in Sweden and Norway, high schools I'm bringing in as a formal curriculum, esports.
I'll ask the same question to Andy, then I'll get some questions from the floor. Andy, so how would you define sports and athletes?
Well, I think sports has two strong values. Obviously, there's more values, but one is educational, and then the other is bringing people together. And if you look at the world now becoming more digital, the human factor is really starting to dry up. And I think what sports can do is that educational portion, because sports itself is somewhat digital, but analog. If you lose, you lose, but you can win the next match. So there's this good, strong educational element that brings people to their, reality in a positive way. So even if they play games or not, I think those people who were only in his own world, you get the opportunity to, play with your friends or compete. Then if you lose, but you can have the opportunity to revenge, which I think mirrors a good value of, a human value. That's one side. And the other side is the more it gets bigger and competitive, you bring your family, you bring your friends and watch it, and you have that togetherness, which I think is the deeper side of the pure value of sports that exists. And even in sports, there's perspectives that, is this a sport? Like a few years back, until women's soccer won the World Cup, people were saying, they're women's soccer. All of a sudden they win the World Cup, it's a national phenomenon. And if you look at rugby a year back, oh, they're only foreigners, they're not good or whatever. But when they win, everyone follows. I think it's that perspective that really gets in the way. And sports can really break that in many ways. And that's the pure strength of sports, is breaking that barrier. So that's my perspective on sports, is that value I think we should never forget, and really utilize that in the right way.
Wonderful. I'd like to open the floor for questions. Please raise your hand if you have a question in either Japanese or in English. I'm sure there's many questions. Okay, the gentleman in the very front. Please let us know who the question is addressed to.
Hello, I'm David Katz from PayPal, and I don't know, I think it's addressed to potentially the whole panel. I'll throw it out there. So you spoke a number you spoke about augmented reality and virtual reality, and it strikes me that there's an opportunity then to have venues where you have a sport exhibited that could be done locally, it could be globally. And you could have, for example, a very popular global franchise suddenly now having that exhibition, if you will, everywhere in the world. So with that technology in the offing, does this mean that sport is going to become more concentrated, where we're just going to have a handful of global brands in a given sport that everyone follows because they can now? Or is it going to democratize sport more and allow for more participation? What do you see happening in the future based on this technology?
Great question. Yobie, do you want to start off?
I think it's going to be more democratic, but by far more democratic. We're working on technology right now where we're building stadium-sized holograms. If you can imagine a stadium of a sport where it's a huge hologram, and we can do that. But the interesting thing, that only brings more revenue to unused stadium space. What's more interesting is it's multi-channel. It's not just the stadium. It's the internet. It's YouTube. It's whatever other technologies where people feel they participate. The old world of sports was in some ways, was not democratic. You sit down, you have a beer, and you have your potato chips and watch the game, and you get a little rowdy with your friends. But now, it's different. You can follow, as the ambassador was saying, you can rewind the game right now. You can actively rewind the game. You look at the NFL Plus thing on the internet, you can just go rewind yourself. This has never been done before. And now you're going, that level of participation and that level of personalization is going to bring a lot more democracy into the sport. And actually more fans, I believe.
Andy, do you want to address the brand part of the question?
Well, I guess there's going to be more dots that you can connect. So yes, the major sports will grow, but also I think there's opportunities for smaller sports to grow itself, because there's so many dots in different countries that you wouldn't estimate. And I think perspectives got in the way in the past, where, let's say, the major league fans would only watch major leagues. And now you see a lot of clips in Major League, let's say, Fan Cave in the US, of Japanese programs, of Japanese high school, if it's good. So there's a lot of exchanges of valuable content that if you transcend the communication together, it starts to tie the notch. And I think it's that storyline and the opportunity that if you can manage it together, those dots will increase. So the size might change, but I think the opportunities will increase, because now you're playing with a global platform compared to a niche area that you struggle with. Now you can, based on the technology and internet, there's so many opportunities to connect if you can really get the right people in.
One comment, in the United States, we have this notion of blackouts. A game is blacked out from a certain market because whatever, they didn't sell enough tickets in the stadium, they blacked it out. That doesn't work anymore, because somebody's going to stream it. Somehow there's somebody there in that stadium with Periscope or Facebook Live just streaming the stuff. And so it doesn't work anymore. And that's the type of democracy that will happen. The full control of an event is going to disappear. You have to, as a sports team owner, as a stadium owner, you have to embrace the audience in how they participate in your sports or how they experience your sport.
And to add on, from a brand point of view, I think it's an era that you want to develop together. So if you can grow together, I think the relationship will become deeper and authentic, which is the true value of sports marketing, is if you can get that alliance together, it really will pan out. And the opportunities are increasing. So if you can really understand that dynamics, then it will start to pay off.
I think it's the democracy of the technology allowing people to be out of the physical space. But I think always we still have this physical space to be very important, a core piece of information, and the value creation of how to design the local experience versus the global experience is always going to be there. And so I think the stadium professional business of the sport industry may still use this mass stadium approach, but if you look into other approaches, maybe smaller fields that people can play around in different regions and then be connected by the network to play against each other, could happen. And so in that sense, it opens up more opportunities that you don't need a huge, hugely invested stadium physical experience.
Do we have more questions? Please wait for the microphone.
No, I'm Kanjarek, young global leader from Mongolia. It seems that sometimes in certain countries, some sports are considered a part of those certain countries' culture. For instance, I would say the Japanese sumo. So how do you see the future of sumo?
The future of sumo.
That's a great question.
Maybe I might ask the ambassador to take that question.
That's a good person to ask. I really love sumo. I was actually at the sumo staple a few weeks ago. I had this opportunity to have chanko nabe with several sumo wrestlers.
Wow.
I have to say they have a really down-to-earth lifestyle and a high discipline, which I think is very important. Just I want to start from a base, and then I'll answer your question. We were talking about how athletes will change, how the media will change, how viewership will change. I think it's very important to understand that more and more sports is going to become very important. And then sports personality and their personal stories will become, I think, very, very important. Audience would like to connect with who they are, how they get to where they are, and just that narrative that we have almost like in a reality TV show, which I think it will become part of the game, part of the experience. Every culture has a national sport that is identified with the culture. In Macedonia, that would be maybe football and basketball. We are very strong in football. And then in basketball, 2011, we got the fourth place in Europe. And we were first in the Europe female team in handball. And I can tell you what a big impact that has on fans and people in general, people even who are not interested in sports. They go and cheer and they're excited. And this is something I think is going to become very, very important for the future, especially also seeing from my point of view in the cultural diplomacy. To use sport as a tool of cultural diplomacy. And sumo, I think, will become that kind of tool for Japan. Because we see many players coming from Mongolia. I had the opportunity to meet with some of them. They speak perfect Japanese. I've been in Japan for 11 years. And when I came first time, and I would listen to their interviews on TV after they win, and they speak such wonderful Japanese. I'm always amazed. How were they able to learn Japanese? They didn't go through official language school or anything. And yet, this is such an important link between Japan and Mongolia, or Japan and other countries. There are sumo players from Bulgaria, from other countries as well. And I think sumo is a traditional sport. It hasn't changed for so many years. And personally, I wouldn't like the sports to change. Maybe it will change the way we look at sumo, with that, all the technology that we were talking about, augmented reality, virtual reality, or different ways, or maybe to see how they're preparing to get to where they are. I think that will be an interesting aspect. But as a tool, national sport as a tool for cultural diplomacy, it's going to become a very important element in the future.
Okay. Any more questions?
I think, by the way, sumo.
Sure.
The thing that I think that will, not only preserve that. See, in the States, we have this notion of fantasy football. Okay, so it's not a very long stretch to think about fantasy sumo, right? Wherein you basically collect your players, and then you put in the aspect, I hate to say this, but you put in the aspect of betting. Because betting has been a huge driver of esports, of fantasy league games, which is a multi-billion-dollar business already in the United States. So you combine the notion of a fantasy sport format, you combine that with betting, and it's very possible that there's going to be a young Japanese entrepreneur here that's just going to go and create their own sumo league and popularize it. And it's not such a far-off vision, because I am sure people bet on sumo games already, somehow, somewhere.
Sensitive topic sometimes.
But Andy, what about fantasy sumo? Will that sell in the Japanese market?
If you regulate it correctly, I think it will. There is a strong betting culture, but there is a strong sensitive line of how it's managed. So it's all about that structure, and if it's transparent and it's fair, and whatever it needs to be controlled. It has to be. I think betting is a very risky factor. That I think the value of fantasy sports so big in the U.S., for example, is they know how to control it. Right? There's a very strong discipline on both sides. So, I think if you can control that, there will be a huge opportunity.
Any more questions? Oh, the gentleman right there at the very right.
Chering Lama, YGL from Nepal. My question to the panel about sport entertainment in terms of messaging, because it's a big platform. One is you just raised about the gambling, but you didn't raise about what Her Excellency mentioned about that importance of cultural values of sport, about bringing up the traditions. How much that entertainment side puts into a messaging of the importance of bringing a uniting, then branding and all this marketing side of advertisement. What's your take on that?
I think capitalism wins. And what I mean by that is whatever drives the profit margin to its highest level is going to win. Whether it's going to be the cultural aspect and the educational aspect, the team aspect of sports, they're very, very important. But at the end of the day, sports is one of the biggest businesses in the world. And it's that business driver and the profit that will drive, the growth of any sport, whether it's traditional sport or e-sport or a sport we haven't even invented yet.
Andy, would you agree?
Well, I think compliance will be a big factor because, again, with so much social media out there, there's going to be more and more transparency required, and also a lot of news that will come up that you don't want to hear, and it's already happening in so many aspects. So I think it's a difficult line. It is a very, very difficult line of which you want to go. And yes, probably the financial side will pull in many directions, but the courage to really face that will ultimately make you grow bigger, because I think you've seen a lot of global leagues or associations facing that problem right now. No matter if they liked it or not, I think there's so many aspects that it's uncontrollable today. They have to redefine what you just asked, is what's that real message in sport. So I think the more you can control it and make sure in the right way, not to clamp, but also in a natural way, I think you can really make sure that you can grow in many aspects.
I think yes, the money is important as a driver, but I think the money comes from the user and fans and the players. So if you think about kabuki, the Japanese traditional culture, now we have super kabuki, which is a modernized translation of kabuki culture. So what if we have the sumo and then super sumo, not like the betting, but redefining what sumo is in the era of 21st century with all this social media space and augmented reality. That could be another way of looking at the designing of engagement, which will then translate that into business or money.
I just would like to add that
Sure.
it's a very good question. And I think the messaging, it's subliminal, actually choosing to support this athlete or this sport, which, for example, certain brands, which are sponsors, they're choosing athletes which in line with the image that they want to project in society and to connect with their base consumers and so ever. So we are witness in the latest Olympic Games. There are several athletes who were using some substances that are not allowed, and many their supporters, financial supporters, sponsors, they back out. They left them, even though it might look cruel for the world that observing that one athlete maybe it did something bad in this instance, but in generally performing very well. So I think that kind of subliminal messaging and that kind of even more rigorous selection of the fans and reaction of the fans and the brands who are supporting the marketing part of the sport is going to become very much more involved, and the message of the sport, it will become even bigger compared to the past, because in the past we were not so much interested in the personal stories, as I said, or the background of the athletes or the sport itself, but now it's all becoming one.
Andy, we're approaching the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, Paralympics. We'll be hosting the 2019 Rugby World Cup as well. How do you see the technologies we discussed today playing out into these events?
I think you'll see a huge change in how, not just from a viewer point of view, but also welcoming people. You probably saw a glimpse of the detection camera, but let's say when you entered and you put your barcode, and the experience of hopefully augmented reality, will be in time. And, I think there's so many aspects that will come in. Drone is one other area that's, out there. And I think it will lead to not just 2020, but will give a big, in Japanese, omiyage for the future, which I think that's the most important part is, Professor is working daily of thinking about breakthrough ideas, and the 2020 will push that momentum. So 2020 is a good touch point, but I think the most important part is beyond 2020, what you can, leave after. And from a society point of view, Paralympics is another huge, big opportunity that the society will really change because of the barrier-free opportunities that will create in, let's say, the Olympic Village that could transition to the society itself. And the popularity, for example. So there's a double edge effect of the society values and the entertainment values that will really be an ignition for the future and not just 2020 as an end game.
What about you, Masa? How do you see 2020?
Definitely, the spectator experience will be radically different than sitting in the stadium and cheering. I think we can cheer at home, everywhere, anywhere, and collectively with people. And that experience is going to be so different, even better than sitting in the stadium. Maybe you can be right next to the player on the field rather than in the seat.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if you have lots of cameras in stadium, you can sensitize and create a artificial camera move as if you are standing right beside the actual playing going on. And that is technically possible. The question is, how do we experience that out of the stadium with AR, VR technologies, and how do we cheer with collectively as a fan, people not at home lonely, but as if you are with people together. And so technology is there. The question is, how can we design that so that it's stable enough and people can actually use it to enjoy?
Madam Ambassador, how do you see the new trends evolving into 2020 Tokyo Olympics, Paralympics, and other events?
I'm very happy that Tokyo was chosen for the 2020 Olympics.
Okay.
There's one beautiful movie from Shohei Imamura about the Olympic Games in the 60s that happened in Tokyo. And I think I haven't seen more motivated nation to design and redesign the city itself, the experience of viewing the event than Japan and Japanese people. So I have very high expectations for the event. I've met personally, before I was a director of the TEDx talks in Kyoto for 2 years, and one of the speakers was already like maybe 6 years ago designing glasses similar to the Google Glass, hoping that one day when they have Olympics, they can be used to experience the moment. I think that kind of devices like Google Glass or similar devices will be hopefully used in a safe way, reliable way. I think that's very important. Even though we are talking about all these technologies as if they're already here, I'm very sorry to tell you they're not, because they are here in a way, but also we need to test it in many, many ways to see if they're consumer friendly and if they're reliable enough to really cater the different kind of audience. I think in terms of Japan, there will be many people coming from all around the world to watch the games. Just imagine if you're sitting somewhere in Tokyo in some stadium and you can switch to another event. You check another game, check another results, or take a snap, send it to your friend, post it digitally in the same time, in real time, on Facebook or Instagram without even removing the glasses, doing that by remote control. Or have a translation, because the language also will be part of the experience when you're, especially in Japan. So I really have high expectation, and I think this kind of event, it can be used as a driving engine to push innovation forward and to give us some deadline that we have to achieve. And of course, that's only one push, and I think to fully develop certain technology for the future, it will take much more time and human involvement.
Yobie, I'm going to make it slightly more difficult for you. Predict for us what kind of technologies we'll have during the 2020 Olympics, Paralympics, and in 10 years.
For certain, because we're actually developing it, there's going to be augmented reality. That's 100. Light field displays are, it's really not that new, but we're at the point of perfecting, inserting, images in front of, Google Glass is so 2006,
So which sport is best for augmented reality?
I think all sports, because if you look at the phenomenon of Pokemon Go, right? Here you go, you're mixing the physical world that you're going through, one at a time capturing your Pokemon, with something totally virtual. And that virtuality could be anything. As the ambassador mentioned, it could be the athlete statistics, it could be, and this is new revenue sources. Give me more information on the athlete, give me more stuff. I think one of the things that just started in San Francisco, one really interesting sport, and you may not think of it as sport, is drone racing. We have drone racing right now in San Francisco on a weekly basis. I mean, high-speed drones going through obstacle courses, and to be a pilot of a high-speed drone going through an obstacle course requires an extreme amount of skill. I think we'll have these types of sports that, again, right now they're small and local, but they will be really, really big in the future.
Okay, thank you. I hope this stimulated your curiosity and you'll continue the conversation of future of sports. And please join me in thanking this wonderful panel.